of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
It's Monday night at 9 p.m. and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. Dr. Ricky Siegel is a certified sex therapist, educator, and supervisor, and his brother Larry Siegel is a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator. The Siegel brothers are here to answer all your questions about sex and sexuality, but we're unsure who to ask, including questions you didn't even know you had. They will also welcome guests from around the globe to talk about a wide variety of topics and issues within the fascinating world of sexuality. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Sex Talk.
Good evening. It's Monday and time for Sex Talk with the Siegel brothers. My name is Ricky Siegel. I'm a certified sex therapist.
And I'm Larry Siegel, a clinical sexologist and certified sexuality educator.
And my super awesome big brother.
I love to do it. It's my favorite role. You know that?
We're going to be seeing our older brother this week.
Yes. The whole family's getting together. A little vacation.
Yes. Looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
So, how's things? How's sex in the news this week?
There's been some of it. There's been a little bit. Sex is always kind of in the news.
Yeah.
And again, if people want to make news talking about sex, give us a call. If you're listening to us on the radio, on FM dial 95.3, you can call us at 888-565-1470.
1470 WNN in sunny South Florida.
Yes, indeed. So join the conversation.
If you're watching us live on Facebook, hello.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us. Please be so kind as to hit that like and share button. And if you want to join the conversation, you can hit that send email bar on the Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers page.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully Freddie will put that up on the screen and we'll be able to see your questions.
Yeah.
Tonight's kind of a grab bag night.
Yeah,
Right.
I want to kind of keep
We
it
do
light,
this
keep it
every
loose.
once in a while. Every sexuality educator does this.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you're stuck and not sure what you want to lecture on, just pull out a stack of index cards and pass them out, and people always have sexual questions.
Right. And again, it's something that we need to do periodically, because I think one of the things that we all end up doing is collecting these questions, collecting these cards, collecting these papers, and it may sound weird, but we don't often have the chance to just address them and go through them.
Yes. Our old friend and colleague and hero in this field, Marty Klein, put out a book, 20 years ago?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
Questions about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And happy to announce that Marty's going to be lecturing for us at Modern Sex Therapy Institutes.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great.
The Sunday after I am in March, I really should have these dates at the ready.
Mm-hmm.
We will be doing our Institute weekend on the third weekend in March. And,
Is that in California?
No.
He's coming here.
He's going to be doing a live webinar from Palo Alto.
Oh, excellent.
I believe it'll
Excellent.
be Sunday the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
But check modernsextherapyinstitutes.com if you're any therapists or educators or medical professionals who may be interested.
Mm-hmm.
Marty Klein is a giant in the field. And
Yes.
a brilliant partner.
Although he's not that tall.
Yeah, you know, like Dr. Ruth we were talking
That's
about.
right.
Teeny, tiny woman, but a giant.
Yes.
And I don't know what my brilliant partner, Rachel Needle, managed to pull off to get Marty to teach for us, but we're very excited to have him.
Probably some compromising pictures.
But yeah, I'm sure, not to take anything away from that great book, but it was a long time ago, and I'm sure every sexuality educator has stacks of questions from students, from workshop attendees, because, especially with younger people, they're not going to raise their hand and say, what is this or what is that, and look like a dork and risk getting laughed at.
A lot of them do, yeah.
Especially young people have to act like they know, even if they don't.
Right.
So the anonymity of a blank card that they can just write a question on, you get to what people are really
And I got news for you, we do that with adults too. You know, in a lot of seminars, because people just often are not comfortable. And there really is a lot of that kind of filtering. I really want to ask this question, but how does that make me look? Aren't I supposed to know this?
That's the thing
what
with adolescence.
What does it say about me
right?
if I don't know this? Yeah, and I think we've both had that experience. I remember one time, in fact, I think this was one of my Boys Town gigs when I went down to Miami after that whole back and forth kind of thing, where they didn't
with
want me to
the Catholic
to
Church
talk.
running
Right.
the runaway shelters.
Right,
You got
exactly.
pregnant girls, and you can't talk about condoms.
Right, they had 7 boys and 8 girls in their facility. All of them have just been treated or have just gotten over a sexually transmitted infection. All the girls had at least tested positive for pregnancy. I'm sorry, half of them. They're all
Either
on
were
the street.
pregnant or had been
Right.
pregnant.
All on the street, basically hooking, and crack is involved. And they called me to come in and do a program
Yeah,
with
I got
them.
the same call from Catholic Charities a few
But-
years later.
But we're not
You
allowed.
can't say condom. You can't bring
Can't
condoms.
bring condoms, can't talk about condoms, can't say words like penis and vagina.
Penis
And
and vagina.
it was one of those where I ended up saying, I'll send you whatever you need to do the program yourself, but it's not. That's when I first came up with the analogy of asking a plumber to come in and clog your toilet.
Yeah.
I said, not what I do. And then they ended up coming back to me and said, all right, please, come in and do your thing. But
But that's the same silly nonsense that found its way into sex ed curricula, like Palm Beach County and other places in the country, where you're not allowed to bring up a subject, you're not allowed to talk about it, but you can answer,
answer a
students'
question.
question.
Right.
Like, come on,
Right.
this is the game,
Right,
right?
exactly.
So you
Well-
can't still talk about condoms, but if a kid says, "What is a condom?" you don't have to say,
I can't tell you.
"Don't ask me that. You're not supposed to know."
Right.
All right. Then you can answer the
Exactly.
question.
Exactly. So, again, I agreed when they said, okay, you can talk
They
about
fly
condoms, but
around
not as
and
birth
they're
control.
endangered.
Right, exactly.
No, that's a condor,
Condor,
Jenny.
Jenny. But again, the point of that that story was, it going around doing my end runs. Okay, I'm not going to talk about condom as birth control, but I have to talk about how, we're using for STIs and they're used for protection
Disease
and all this kind of
prevention.
stuff, and what doesn't, what birth control doesn't work for protection, all of that. So I'm always going to find a way to get it in. But the payoff on all of that was the adolescent boys, 2 of them that came up to me afterwards. And it was one of these, they came up to me looking around, is anybody seeing me even talk to you, whatever, and kind of like wanted to give me that thank you.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for showing us and telling us how to put on a condom. And again, the looking around, is anybody hearing it? Because we really didn't know, and we can't say that.
Right.
Right? There's that expectation there.
Right,
So
right,
every
right.
guy's supposed to know how to put on a condom.
It's supposed. There's a gene on the Y chromosome.
That's right.
It makes us automatically expert condom users, even if we've never even touched one before.
Well, apparently a lot of guys are lacking that gene. Or it's another
Ain't
part of the
kidding.
fragile Y syndrome. But
Yeah. So it's good
So-
that we just took a random assortment from these recent batch of students' questions.
yeah, I think we both go back 30 years. I've folders and boxes of
Yeah.
questions that at this point are probably moot.
Sure, but I mean, 30 years ago, we didn't get people always asking, "Does cannabis make sex better or worse?" I think that's a more recent one. Well, that's,
I think a
you
lot of
know,
people did, although they were
sure.
probably more likely to, back then, where can I get cannabis?
And does it make sex
And does it
better or
make sex
worse?
better or worse?
You know, that's like the old question. I don't want to get off the subject of sex, but does pot make food taste better?
Well, yes.
Taste is a subjective experience.
Does wind
right?
make the air colder? If you got a wind chill.
But see, that can be shown scientifically. You can measure and show an objective
right.
difference.
You're right, but it's still a
But
qualitative thing.
How many of those dog food burritos does 7-Eleven sell at 2 a.m. versus at 2 p.m.?
Right.
Right? I can't
Yeah.
say they taste any different, but there's certainly a contextual difference.
Right, and
That
those little red meat tubes that have been sitting on those rollers since I think the Reagan administration. Yeah, I can't see anybody eating those in the light of day.
Yeah. So, does cannabis make sex better or worse? We talked about this not long ago. If someone's prone to spectatoring and being in their head and getting paranoid and self-conscious when they're high, then it could make it worse. They
Right.
shouldn't have sex on cannabis.
Right.
But if it helps people with a pleasant, altered sense of time and connection, and right,
And
It's
helps
a subjective-
relax.
It's a subjective
Exactly.
experience.
The letting go of it. But again, just to also bring it back to your analogy, a lot of that debate, it's sort of like, in the Ann Landers, I don't remember if it was Ann Landers or Dear Abby, that once wrote
They
in
were
there,
sisters, right?
Yeah, they were sisters. But basically, whichever one of them said, you know, people don't think better when they're stoned on marijuana. They just think they think better. All right? Now, if you think the food tastes better, as far as I'm concerned, it does.
It does, right?
That's as far as we have to go
course.
with it.
Just
So
like
if it
does
alters
sex
your
feel
perception,
better
It-
doing this or doing
Right.
that. If the sexy brain is
Yeah.
sending sexy signals, that's a subjective experience.
exactly. And if you
Right.
feel more, if your orgasms are stronger, more intense, more pleasurable, if this touch feels so much better with cannabis, then it does.
Music sound better.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side doesn't always work.
Right.
Is your creativity better? Is your art better? Yeah,
That's
maybe
some
when
of
you're
the
high.
think you do.
Yeah, look at it again when you're sober.
Right.
And then decide.
Right. Right. Although I do believe that stoners have pretty much solved every major problem the world has ever faced. The problem
they just
is,
forgot
as soon
they,
as they
yeah.
thought it, they forgot.
Yes. So, yeah,
So,
I mean,
but,
I just
but now
want to
too
plug.
much cannabis, and sometimes with the concentrates and people that are dabbing and things like that, they can seriously
Yes,
overload, and
yes,
it really
yes.
can be an anti-sexual drug.
Absolutely.
So the dose-dependent part of it, we always have to keep in mind.
Yeah. And I just want to plug that this new, relatively new area of research for you. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
excited. I hope all
Yeah.
our listeners are excited that it's going to be a growing segment
Yep.
that we'll be talking more and more
Mhm.
about cannabis
Right.
and sex.
And just to add on to that, also, it is a growing area of involvement for me. Actually, two areas, and they're merging: the cannabis stuff and the seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And they're now merging with Ann Goldberg, Savvy Senior Services. We have these programs and trainings we're doing on cannabis and sexuality for seniors specifically, and for people who are working with them.
Excellent.
So it's a good opportunity not only to do the education and debunking and stuff like that, but I just was it's such a perfect opportunity to get in there and talk with older adults about the multitude of medications that so many are taking,
Sure.
and how much of that can actually be replaced with cannabis.
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
yeah, really looking forward to doing more and more in that stuff, and been now starting to consult with people on basically strains and types, what may work best for them. So
Good evening, Vivian.
it's a new world.
Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Vivian.
Good to have you with us. Feel
Yeah,
free to
glad to see you.
type up a question if you want to ask us one.
Mhm.
Let's go to the next question on our list here.
Sure.
How come there's no birth control for men other than condoms?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a yes and a no thing.
Right.
Right? Yeah,
Right.
condoms are the
Something
only
in the pike.
male controlled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not something, not a hormone or a cervical cap or something
Right.
that's always been women's responsibility. But as long as I'm in this field, I've been hearing there's something in the pike. Right?
Well,
They've
it's
been
been
working
in
on
the works
these
for 25 years.
birth-controlled hormonal
Mhm.
or reversible, some kind of chemical that can. See, the thing with birth control for guys is you have to be able to suppress sperm production and then
And bring
turn
it
it
back.
on again.
Right. Without eliminating the sex drive,
Right. Yeah.
which has been the sticky wicket.
That's why it's been 30 years of trying to
Right.
find something. But well, we keep hearing there's closer.
Yeah, they are. I believe they're in
Supposedly-
clinical trials now.
That's going to be an interesting test on
Mhm.
gender roles when, bar pickups, when guys would be the ones saying, "Oh, don't worry, baby, I'm on the pill." Yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right. And not Truvada.
Right. It's important. If people don't know, if you haven't seen the commercials yet, they've been advertising heavily, but Truvada is an important prevention medication for HIV,
Mm-hmm.
but does not replace the need for safer sex practices and using condoms, and certainly doesn't protect
Right.
against other diseases.
And that's really the big
And-
point. Okay,
right.
HIV, yes, but nothing else.
Right. It's not a license to be unbridled and not have to worry about catching anything.
Right.
Because you can get chlamydia and HPV and syphilis and everything else.
Exactly.
Um,
Right. But there's also, I think, an element of it, and I don't want to be sort of cynical and a little male bashy, but again, that men have always sort of been in control and in charge. So, I would just put this out there as, maybe there's one of those tendrils is, let her worry about it kind of thing. We don't need to.
Well, the long history, remember, condoms go back thousands of years, and they were not intended to help women avoid unwanted pregnancy. They were intended to protect men.
Men, right.
From either disease or, I guess, just leaving a trail of bastard children in their wake. But, it's funny how people act like this is new technology, and most of it, Remember those old stories from the Planned Parenthood days that Cleopatra would put, like, lemon halves as a cervical cap or alligator dung or something, like all these
Well,
kinds
that stuff
of
was actually all, that's been documented.
All these kind of homemade birth control methods.
My favorite one that people would talk about that always made me laugh was, like in these long treks across the desert, they would put stones into the uterus of the camels to prevent them from getting pregnant.
Yeah.
It never happened.
No.
First of all, anybody who would even attempt to put stones in a camel's uterus would not live to tell the tale.
Yeah, that's true. I can't imagine a camel.
It's not so accessible.
There.
No, it never happened. No.
Did that?
No, that was just one of those wives' tales.
Another another myth that was debunked, one that I've been guilty of perpetuating in my early enthusiastic years as a sexuality educator. Apparently those stories about the origin of the phrase rule of thumb are over-exaggerated. That it's really not about the stick with which a man can whip his wife. That apparently is, it's more like a measuring thing, like that's about an inch. So, I read an article.
But that was
and
how
it was
thick
on
the
the
stick
internet,
could be.
so you
if it was on the internet, it must be true.
Has to be true.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
Yeah, apparently there's little validity to those stories about rules in ancient England about how thick a stick could be that a man could beat his wife with.
Well, but they did have sayings.
Sure.
Like, what was it? A horse, a cart, a hickory tree. The more you beat them, the better they be.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, a horse,
sure.
a wife, a
That's
hickory
right.
tree.
Yes.
The more you beat them, the better they be. Yeah, I mean, so...
Yes. And there was that North Carolina State Supreme Court ruling that talked about domestic violence that suggested the best course of action would be to draw the curtains.
Right. Exactly.
Keep a man's business in the home. Why can't men pee when they're hard? Well, that's an interesting question. It's a plumbing question, right? If guys look at an anatomy diagram, they will see, especially the side view, the one that makes kids go like this.
What is that?
Puts it up, right? You'll see that there's like a wide joint in the prostate gland where the vas deferens from the testes and another tube from the bladder join, right? Because unlike women, men use the
Right,
the
we're
penis
more
is
simply
called
built.
a multi-purpose tool. I don't know who gets credit for this idea of procreating, urinating, and recreating. Right? And because we use the same tube, same tool, there has to be, I don't mean this literally, but there has to be kind of like a gate thing. They can't both be open.
Well, it is kind of literal.
You can't urinate and ejaculate
It's a
at the
valve.
same time. Well, if one's open, the other's closed.
Right.
Kind of, right?
Right.
And, of course, most guys believe incorrectly that the myth of morning wood has something to do with having to urinate, so a full bladder pushes on some nerve and causes an erection. No, we wake up with an erection on most days because of testosterone.
Right.
Right.
It's a
Just
high
like
testosterone peak in the morning.
throughout the night. But if we wake up with an erection and have to pee and go to the toilet and, everything down there thinks it's sexy time because it's an erection, the brain has to send down an override. And that's why there's that little pause to get the urine. The brain has to say, no, it's not sexy time, it's pee time.
It's got to relax enough to sort of re-channel.
Start the urine flow, and generally the erection goes down.
We have a call. We have Anthony on the phone. Anthony, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
I had a question about the relationship with when a female wants to have sex, but is never the catalyst for it, and is never the one who
initiates.
Right. So she wants it, but doesn't ask for it.
Yes.
Good question. Yeah. Thanks for calling in with that. I think sometimes, there's these scripts, especially. I'm surprised sometimes when I see such young women adopting such old-fashioned, archaic gender scripts like, if a woman initiates, she's slutty, so she has to give all these cues and clues and hints, and a guy has to, catch on. But I would think that that's the exception more than the rule these days.
But see, that's what
Women
I
are
don't
more
know. And again,
assertive.
the scripts run deep.
Yeah.
And I find, and I know you have the same thing, that a lot of times when we're talking about these things with especially young people and young women, and we're talking about them in academic or a non-social environment, most I'm gonna get it. I'm not waiting for a man. I'm not gonna wait for a guy to call me. If I want to call him, I mean, it's sort of like I don't need a guy to pay for dinner. I can pay for my own dinner. Right? Yeah. Good luck to any guy who lets a woman pay for dinner. You'll never see them again. It's such a no-no. So we have all this rhetoric, and I think younger women. Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, that happens in a relationship, and even forming the relationship, even in kind of a dating thing. I think a lot of young women, in particular, need to learn how to take more of a risk.
Yeah.
To just practice making that first move. And I think guys can do a lot to sort of be supportive of that and sort of let women know that they are approachable, they are askable. But I think we're still fighting a lot of these old scripts. Again, same kind of thing. I'm not going to wait for a man to call me, yet if a guy hasn't called the next day, it's back into the old roles. So we haven't really gone very far. Right? So until we can really shake off those old scripts, this is kind of the way people seem to default to.
Yeah. We should move ahead.
So,
we're running out of time.
But thanks for the question. It's a great call, Anthony.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Thank you so much for the answers.
Sometimes I cry after sex.
Yeah, that happens a lot more than people think.
Yeah, and some men too.
A
not
lot of
just
men
women.
too, exactly.
Yeah, and it's really kind of normal. You have to just remember.
Post-coital dysphoria.
But it isn't always the sadness, necessarily.
No.
Right? Crying isn't always from sadness.
A lot of times it's an emotional release, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, nobody really knows why, but we know that there are certain factors. First of all, the buildup of tension, and then the release of that tension in itself could be an emotional release. The flood of oxytocin, that kind of bonding, connecting hormone. People talk a lot about how, all of this attachment and this bonding stuff, yet you realize it's gone kind of thing. I don't buy any of that, to be honest with you.
No.
I think a lot of it is neurochemical, because I think it also happens a lot with intense orgasms, which I also relate to large doses of adrenaline or epinephrine.
Sure.
And as we see in Navy SEALs and these guys, top the most hardcore guys, and they're in it in like a wartime thing, and that adrenaline is pumping so high, but then they have that letdown
Afterwards.
that after dump where they may sit there shaking and crying.
Sure.
So I think some of it may have to do, because that first part of an orgasm is
It's like fight or flight.
Yeah.
It's a panic. It's a trauma.
it's sympathetic activation.
Yeah.
It's adrenaline. So I think there is that neurochemical aspect
Sure,
that the other
sure.
things feed into.
Are there
But
foods?
it's common.
Are there foods or supplements that are really aphrodisiacs?
In a word,
Nah.
that would be the word.
Certainly not the classics, oysters or green M&Ms.
Right. Nothing will. No, there's no food or substance that makes
Supposedly-
people horny.
Well, supposedly phenylethylamine, PEA, right? The love molecule in chocolate.
They call it that, but again, is it? Or is somebody giving you chocolate and make you horny for them?
Well, maybe
You
that's how
want
the
that
maybe that's
connection,
how the
that
ritual
intimacy.
started, right?
Well,
Right.
but is it? But
Of
you
all
could-
the things,
So does jewelry cause a release of phenylethylamine?
that's a good question. I don't
You
know.
know, if I offer to do the laundry, is that triggering? So I mean, we got to be careful in
This-
a lot of that stuff.
A
but it could
classic
be.
question: does size really matter?
Actually,
Well,
yes.
certainly does.
Right,
Yes.
now again, how are we looking
Too
at this?
big can be a problem.
Right,
I
and not
just
big
heard
enough.
a case this morning where a woman was really distressed, and we
Mm-hmm.
were like talking logistics because there are spacers that can limit how far it could go in, and she was
Well, sure.
yeah,
Hands
and
are good
vaginas
ones.
are only so long, right?
Yeah.
So guys who think
Yeah.
that if you're hung like
3 to 5 inches.
a horse, then that's a good thing. Well, there's only so far it can go in.
Right.
Right,
Right.
and
Exactly.
I'm sure plenty of people would look at a giant thing and be like, "What do you think you're going to do with that?" Mm-hmm. Most guys tend to be self-conscious and consider themselves smaller than average because they're looking at freaks in porn.
Right, exactly.
The average is
I mean, these
smaller
guys are
than-
chosen for their special abilities.
and growers and showers,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
much less variability in erect penises than there are in
Right.
flaccid ones. So guys need to get over their
But now,
hang-ups.
I do want to say that there actually has been a study, and it did show that for most women, heterosexual women, we're talking about here, penis size does make a difference, but it's more about width. It's more about thickness than it
That
is
sense
length.
of fullness.
Right, exactly. Right, being able to sort of feel that there is something in it. So it's not about how big or how long the guy's penis is, but a little bit of girth.
Man, we got to get a sponsor and get an hour. These there's so many questions here I want to talk about, and we got the 2-minute warning already.
Yep, yep.
So
So
feel
a
free
couple
to
of questions
send in
here.
your questions. Maybe we'll just do one or two,
Yeah,
one more
add to our list
before we
So,
gotta.
yeah. Let's
this
try to
one.
squeeze in another
Let's
one.
see if we can get this one in before we run out of time. My husband complains my vagina feels loose. What can I do? This is an age-old complaint,
Mm-hmm.
and it's never. It's hardly ever about the woman. It's more often than not about a guy's death grip when he's by himself, and that no vagina or mouth or anus can duplicate that.
Mm-hmm.
So guys need to get used to being responsive to a greater variety of stimuli. Young guys would be well served to mix it up if they're practicing mostly by themselves before they get
Right.
into partner
Different
sex.
touches, different
Left
tensions.
hand, right hand, overhand, underhand,
That's
with
right.
a condom, without a condom,
That's
with
right.
lube, without lube. So you know what the music means.
Right. So, but let me just say also, with that being said, real quick too, that sometimes the pelvic floor with multiple kids and age does get a little bit loose. So Kegel exercises can be very, very
Right,
helpful.
pelvic floor physical therapy. We're going to have one on as our guest soon.
Yeah, she'll be back.
That's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks for joining us. We'll be here next Monday and every Monday for Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers.
Have a great week.
You've been listening to Sex Talk with the Siegel Brothers. Join us every Monday night at 9 p.m. on WNN, 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. Or watch live streaming video at AMP2 TV Productions on Facebook, or look for the shows on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again next week.